Okay, think about the last time maybe you had an IV put in. It seems pretty simple.
On the surface, yeah,
Yeah.
just a quick poke.
But behind that simple action, there's actually a really fascinating story. We're talking innovation, some potential, let's say, roadblocks, and this constant push for better ways to do things.
Absolutely.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into IV cannulation. Specifically, we're looking at this this spring-loaded cannula idea.
Right. How it came about, maybe what stalled it, and what that tells us about, medical progress itself.
And this wasn't just some sketch on a napkin, was it?
Oh, no, not at all. We know this thing, this spring-loaded cannula, it was actually tested.
Tested, like properly.
Yeah, the results were even published in Anesthesia and Analgesia, which is a pretty big deal in that field.
Okay.
And it got a patent way back in 1992.
92. Wow.
So yeah, it had some serious groundwork, some recognized novelty behind it.
All right, so let's get into the specifics then. This device, some of the stuff we looked at called it Venecin.
That's the name that comes up, yes. Venecin. Essentially a self-introducing cannula.
And the potential benefits sound, well, pretty compelling.
They really do. The big one is aiming for first attempt success, making that the norm.
Anyone who's been stuck multiple times would appreciate that, I think.
Definitely. And it was also designed to make the whole process simpler, less fiddly maneuvering.
Meaning maybe you wouldn't need someone with, like, years and years of experience for every single insertion.
That's part of the implication, yes. Potentially reducing the need for highly specialized operators, which, has big implications for healthcare access.
Wider access. Makes sense.
And it was versatile, too. You could apparently use it the standard way or engage this spring-loaded plunger system it had.
And the person who invented it, their motivation seems quite grounded in real-world problems.
Very much so. It seems they were dealing with MRSA infections firsthand back in the late 80s.
MRSA, right? The serious antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Exactly. And observing infections that were actually caused by medical treatment itself, iatrogenic infections.
So the hope was this device would cut down on trauma, delays, infection risk.
Precisely. Minimize all of that. And importantly, also reduce how much healthcare workers had to handle potentially infectious patients directly.
Which is huge, especially thinking about pandemics or outbreaks.
A massive consideration. Looking at the patent details, the mechanism itself is, well, quite clever.
How did it actually work?
It used a spring, basically, to advance the cannula forward.
Just sproing.
Sort of, but controlled. There was a single trigger release. You'd use it after you saw the blood flashback in the chamber.
Ah, the visual confirmation. Got it.
Right. And crucially, it also had automatic needle retraction. The needle would pull back and lock away safely.
To prevent needle stick injury.
Exactly, which was a major focus even then. It was quite an integrated safety approach for the early 90s.
It really does sound like a leap forward. And it wasn't just the inventor singing its praises.
No, definitely not. We found references to some very respected figures in medicine who reviewed it positively.
Like who?
Well, Stephen L. Schaefer, professor at Stanford, editor-in-chief of Anesthesia and Analgesia, he apparently said it worked quite well.
High praise from a journal editor.
And Ronald D. Miller, another editor-in-chief for the same journal, called the method clever, an original idea, something that may help advance our clinical practice.
Wow. Okay. Any others?
Even the MHRA in the UK, the regulatory agency there, apparently called it an exciting concept.
So, expert approval, regulatory interest. You'd think it would have taken off, right?
You would think so. And that's where the narrative shifts a bit.
Okay.
Because around the same time, or perhaps gaining more traction, was the rise of what's called the safety cannula.
The safety cannula. I think most people in healthcare would recognize those now.
Yes. Their main function is protecting the worker after insertion, preventing needle sticks with shields or retraction mechanisms.
Right. Important, obviously. But different from what Venecin was trying to do.
Very different focus. Venecin aimed to improve the insertion success itself. Safety cannulas deal with the needle after it's out.
Okay. So what's the alleged connection?
Well, the argument presented in our sources is that the big manufacturers focused on, return on investment.
ROI.
They prioritized pushing the safety cannula, maybe over the spring-loaded Venecin.
Why would they do that if Venecin was so promising?
The claim is it boils down to profit. Safety cannulas became a big market.
Okay. And the sources suggest they sort of, promoted the fear of needle sticks?
That's the allegation, that the very real fear of needle stick injuries was perhaps amplified to drive sales of these specific safety devices.
Which are admittedly more expensive than basic cannulas.
Generally, yes. And there's even a suggestion, a bit more controversial perhaps, that manufacturers weren't keen on tech that might de-skill doctors.
De-skills, meaning making it too easy, reducing reliance on maybe their other products or training.
That seems to be the implication raised. Whether that's accurate or not, it paints a picture of commercial interest, potentially, sidelining a more fundamental process improvement.
It does raise that question, doesn't it? Where does the focus of innovation go?
Exactly. Is it on incremental safety add-ons, which are valuable, don't get me wrong?
Sure.
Or is it on transforming the core procedure itself? The argument is that safety cannulas add cost, primarily benefit the provider post-insertion.
Whereas something like Venekin aim to improve the actual insertion success rate, which benefits the patient directly, reduces attempts, maybe even saves costs overall.
That's the core of the argument. Fewer attempts, fewer complications, better outcomes, less waste, potentially lower overall cost.
So it makes you, the listener, think about how these decisions get made, right? What drives innovation in medical devices? Is it always purely about the best clinical outcome?
Or how much do market dynamics and existing investments play a role? It's complex.
And there's another twist here regarding patents, isn't there?
Yes, quite relevant. The patent protection for many of those original safety cannulas has now expired.
Meaning the market's more open.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And the inventor of Venekin, based on the comments we saw, suggests that now, without that safety patent advantage for competitors, the actual benefits of a first attempt success device might finally motivate manufacturers.
So the changing business landscape could maybe bring this older idea back into the spotlight.
It's a possibility. The economic incentives might be shifting.
Interesting. If we zoom out a bit, it's kind of amazing how little the basic IV insertion technique has changed.
It really is. You know, the fundamental method. Largely the same since the mid-1950s.
Wow. Despite better plastics, better training.
Despite all that, the core challenge remains. And
Yeah.
we still see the same problems, like
Yes.
the pain and anxiety of repeated sticks. One source mentioned an average of, 3.3 cannulas per patient attempt sometimes?
3.3, that's a lot of attempts.
It is. And the risk of double puncture going right through the vein. Or pulling the needle out too soon. Plus, just the difficulty in high-pressure situations, emergencies, infectious disease wards.
Where maybe sterile technique gets rushed.
It's a risk, all adding cost, time, and let's not forget contaminated waste, environmental impact too.
And the human side, the stress.
Huge. For patients, obviously, but also for the clinicians. We saw mention of cannula yips.
Cannula yips, like in golf.
Apparently, that anxiety and loss of confidence after failed attempts, it's a real psychological burden.
I can imagine. Especially when you're dealing with patients who are already difficult sticks, maybe cancer patients, people with fragile veins.
Exactly. Patient factors play a big role, vein size, depth, whether they roll, but technique matters too. Angle, stabilization.
And when it goes wrong repeatedly, it's not just uncomfortable. It can delay treatment, right?
Absolutely. Delays in getting vital fluids or medications in.
Right.
Missed opportunities potentially to prevent worse outcomes.
Which really brings us back to why something like this spring-loaded cannula seems so potentially valuable.
Precisely. It directly addressed that core problem. First attempt success. Getting it right the first time, more often.
You can see how that would be massive in difficult scenarios.
Yeah.
You mentioned pandemics earlier, trying to cannulate someone through layers of PPE.
Exactly. Or in war zones, low resource settings where you don't have legions of expert cannulators on hand.
It could really change things.
There was even a mention of potential patient empowerment, maybe self-cannulation in emergencies down the line.
Whoa, okay. That's a whole other level. Needs careful thought, obviously.
Absolutely. But it speaks to the potential impact. The main point, really, is this call for innovation to focus on that first attempt success.
Not just on the safety features after the attempt, however important they are.
It's about improving the fundamental procedure. That seems to be the underlying message.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've looked at this spring-loaded cannula, Venekin. Really clever idea, it sounds like.
Definitely promising. Aimed at making IVs easier, more successful first time.
But we've also explored these claims that its path was maybe blocked or slowed by commercial focus on the safety cannula market.
Driven by ROI, fear of needle sticks, and patent strategies. according to the arguments presented.
And all this highlights just how much we still need genuine innovation in what seems like a basic, everyday procedure.
Because the challenges are real, they affect patients, they affect staff, they affect the whole system.
Which leaves a big question for you, our listener, doesn't it?
I think so. When you hear about a potentially beneficial innovation like this, and then these arguments about commercial interests possibly holding it back, what does that make you think?
What are the wider implications when promising medical tech faces resistance, maybe because of profit motives tied to older tech?
And how important is transparency, is advocacy, in making sure the best tools actually reach patients and the clinicians trying to help them?
It really does make you pause and consider the forces shaping the medical tools we rely on.
It does. And as technology races ahead elsewhere, it's crucial we keep asking if we're applying that ingenuity effectively in these fundamental areas of care.
Absolutely. The goal has to be supporting advancements that genuinely prioritize patient well-being and make healthcare work better for everyone.
And the story of the spring-loaded cannula, whether it ultimately gets revisited or not, is a really powerful reminder of that complex dynamic between invention, industry, and the need for progress.